Attention listeners, ahead are spoilers.
Hello, and welcome to the Movie Trap. My name is Russell Carlson, and with me, as always, is Chris Boroff.
So the house is a girl.
And also with me is Zach Powers.
How do you do, fellow teens?
Welcome to the Movie Trap. You actually are in the middle of our spooky theme in the middle of Halloween. So this is what we are doing now. It's our kind of offshoot traditional annual thing, our Halloween battle, as we like to call it, and where how it was worked out previously on the Movie Trap was that we, rather than have one of us choose it, we would roll a dice, and that would be the theme we could go on, and then I would have to pick it, and so that's why we are ending up with today with 2006 Monster House, because the theme is movies that fall in or around the day Halloween. There was some debate on whether or not it could be a horror movie. Zach and I have ruled that if you could find a movie that doesn't make it Halloween, it still counts if it is on Halloween. It doesn't have to be a horror movie. So
It's
I kind of
it's kind of like
the difference.
There's this debate around Christmas movies every year. It's like sort of Die Hard rules, or there's a bunch of these movies that have like a scene or two on Christmas that people are like, that's a Christmas movie for me. Hey man,
Right.
if there's Christmas iconography, you're entitled to say it's a Christmas movie.
That's right.
And if there's Halloween iconography, we're gonna let you say
It's allowed on the theme. That's
it's a
right.
Halloween movie.
That's right. Okay, so that's what we are in. So basically the same rules as usual apply. Each of us gets 10 points for voting, and then each of us picks a movie based off this theme, plus some bonus points we get along the way. The one thing that is different, though, is rather than the winner of the vote choosing the next theme, they get a bonus movie, which they will inflict on their fellow co-hosts after we are done with the Halloween theme. So that brings us to today. Since everybody's at 10 points, this is the first movie of the theme. Welcome, ghosts and goblins, and welcome to the fun. And I have chosen Monster House, 2006 in Monster House, because it does take place on Halloween, and I had never really seen it before, so I thought, why the hell not? And then I didn't even know that Borf's former coworker had written the story and screenplay. Former boss, yes, indeed.
Yeah, Dan Harmon.
I was trying to give you a promotion. Yeah, I was trying to give you a promotion. So I thought it would be fun to dust out of like more of like a kids movie. And what the hell, it's got Steve Buscemi in it. Why not? So here we are with Monster House. Zach Powers, why don't you walk us through the Monster House?
Monster House is a 2006 computer animated sort of children's horror film, I guess you might describe it as. Comedy / horror. It's directed by Gil Keenan, and as mentioned, written by Dan Harmon, Rob Schraub, and Pamela Petler. The story, it stars, I should say, Mitchell Musso, Sam Lerner, Spencer Locke, and Steve Buscemi, and then among some other famous names like Maggie Gyllenhaal and Kevin James and people, Fred Willard, people like that. Yep. So the story takes place in Wisconsin in 1983 on All Hallows Eve. A 12-year-old named DJ Walters is left alone for the weekend as his parents are going out of town for the convention, and he has been spying recently on a nearby house, which has always been a source of local legend. Any toy that goes near the house is immediately confiscated, and the owner of the house, a man named Nevercracker, anytime like a toy comes by, is immediately on the alert and yells at the children to stay away from his house, and the toy is generally confiscated. And the mystery deepens as DJ invites his friend Chowder
Chowder. Say it right.
Chowder over to his house. and their basketball ends up over on the lawn. And they attempt to retrieve it. But as Nebuchadnezzar comes out to try and stop them, he seemingly dies of a heart attack while trying to force them away from his home. Later that night, they start getting calls from the house with no one on the other end. Meanwhile, they have a babysitter played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, who is very irresponsible and invites her boyfriend Bones over to the house. And he had his kite stolen as a child by the house by Nebuchadnezzar. And after a fight, her boyfriend Bones is sent out of the house and sees his kite across the street in the haunted house, and is lured over there and is seemingly eaten by the house itself. The carpet extends and grabs him, and there's hints of this earlier in the movie as well. So the next morning, there is a young girl in their house that Chowda and I guess also DJ have a crush on, named Jenny, who is coming by door to door selling Halloween candy for her, I think her Girl Scout troop, I want to say.
It's like her prep school. It's like a prep school fundraiser, which
right.
Assuming they pay a lot in tuition, they still have to go around and beg for money.
She makes the error of trying to sell to the house in question and is attacked and saved, but the police are called after the incident and do not believe that the house is a monster house. They enlist the advice of a fellow named Skull, who is the compadre of Bones in their band, who tells them that the house is a monster that is like sort of merged with a human skull and can only be destroyed by destroying its heart. And they conclude that as Nebuchadnezzar died, his spirit infused with the house and must have become the monster itself. So they decide to pack a dummy full of cold medicine. I don't know how they bought that much cold medicine. That's a terrorist alert.
Yeah, there are definitely some meth children going on in this.
Yeah. So they're going to trick the house into eating all the cold medicine so they can go in and extinguish its heart/furnace. But the two cops intervene and they are unable to sedate the house. But the police vehicle and everyone else is grabbed by the house after they are arrested, and everyone is stuck inside, the police missing, and the three kids exploring. They head down to the basement. They find the skeleton of Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Constance the Giantess, a former sideshow performer who was sort of, a larger than average woman who, was mocked at a sideshow. And they are vomited outside the house after they grab its uvula. And it turns out Nebuchadnezzar never died at all. He survived. He returns home, and he tells them that the house is possessed not by him, but by his former wife, a woman he met at a freak show and fell in love with, but who was always sort of mentally unstable. They built the house together, but she was, because of her history of being at the sideshow, uncomfortable with people coming to her house and mocking her, and
she had post-traumatic stress disorder. That's basically what it was. She had had a rough life, and being in a house with kids coming by for Halloween pulling tricks rather than treats was a whole problem for her. Yeah.
Yeah. One Halloween night, she tried to chase down two kids who were tormenting her and fell into the unfinished basement and died, inadvertently falling into a cement mixer and being buried inside the house. Nevercracker decided to finish the house because he didn't know what else to do with his life. The love of his life was gone, but Constance possessed it. And he has ever since scared away kids for their safety. They convinced Nevercracker that this is unsustainable in the long run. One day he will die and people will get hurt. And Constance is enraged by the idea of the one person who loves her, like, leaving for good, and breaks free from the Foundation, and chases them down to a construction site. Nevercracker tries to comfort her, and attempts at the same time to destroy the house with dynamite from the construction site. But fails, though Chowder intervenes with an excavator, and everybody falls into the, I watched this a couple weeks ago. This is a problem whenever we do this podcast on the long term. I start to forget details.
But we'll be getting into this in a second, but yeah, it also could be potentially a plotting issue, that it is hard to remember details when so many random events keep occurring in the film.
Yeah.
But keep going. You've almost got it.
You're almost there. You're there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. So they have a exciting action. Yeah, they have an exciting adventure on the construction site with a bunch of shit happening.
Tractor.
Yeah, there's tractors and blah, 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 blah. But eventually they manage to get the dynamite into the house's chimney, destroying it and releasing Constance's ghost. And they see the ghost dancing with Nevercracker before fading away. Nevercracker apologizes to everybody for the years of turmoil and all of those things. And that night, Nevercracker is giving away candy to children at his empty hole that used to be a house.
Well, like their former toys.
It's kind of a weird mix of like Halloween and Christmas. He's like Santa Claus, kind of.
Yeah, that's right. He's giving back all the toys they used to have. Some of the kids that fell into the house years ago, like the fella from earlier in the movie, Skull or Bones, whichever one it was, is able to stumble out.
Cops, the dog.
Yeah. And anybody we saw injured, comes back to life. Apparently ignoring anyone who died before the movie started, which could have been thousands of children.
Could have been
Yeah,
and it could have been a good time for a joke,
Yeah.
Regardless,
not that I'm
like Jimmy Hoffa crawling out. That would have been funny.
Look at that. That would be great, dude. That would be funny. That's hilarious.
But
Take note, Hollywood.
the two main characters, DJ and Crowder, go trick-or-treating one last time, despite worrying they were too old because they had a big adventure.
And
that's pretty much it.
And scene. Yeah, it's fine. Whatever. It's because it's like 2006 computer animated, right? So like, and this one, as I understand, was still like motion capture. So like, there was a lot of like kind of rotoscoping, I guess, going on. And I know Zemeckis was huge on this technology early, and he's an executive producer of this as well. And
he kind of still is, I feel like.
Yeah.
It felt like it had a weird frame rate when I watched it. Like, I know it was 24 frames a second, but it seemed like it was doing slightly less. Like they were doing it on the 14s or the 15s, where they were doubling up some of the frames. It felt like they were trying to do like a claymation look with certain scenes, but then other things would be very smooth. It was very strange.
I was thinking about that maybe if Aardman had done this instead of Zemeckis, if it, like I think the technology is obviously vastly improved from where it was, almost 20 years ago. But yeah, I mean, in a way, I sort of ignored this movie when it came out just because I was sort of tired of like Polar Express and Beowulf and whatnot from Zemeckis.
I think this is better than that, but
for sure. But it's like sandwiched right in the middle of all that, so I sort of just like kind of ignored it as like shrapnel to avoid.
Yeah, I think this one, if I remember correctly, I've asked. I at one point in time had a chance to ask Rob and Dan. Excuse me. Well, individually, I asked Rob about this, and he explained that I guess what had occurred is they came out here to do stuff for Scud, the movie Scud, when it was coming out. That one never actually got produced. They flew out here thinking that based off solely getting an option on the comic book that would be them like then hired to write it. But when they got out here, they found out that no, they don't need to hire you to write it. They've got writers out here who are going to do that. So they then
hear
started,
it 1,000 times.
Yeah. So long story short, what ended up happening is they got him a lot of notices. Or Oliver Stone got interested back when he was a big name. And then that got them pulled over talking to Zemeckis, and they had a couple scripts that they were pitching around town. This was Dan and Rob. One of them was Big Ant Movie, which was literally a movie about giant ants, just like the movie Them, I guess. But for some reason, Zemeckis loved that concept, went wild for it, had him in for a meeting, passed on that concept in the meeting, but then... I think Schraub in the parking lot, or it could have been Dan or one of them. Schraub has this tendency to come up with weird ideas, like a shark hotel, for example, a hotel that's haunted by a ghost shark, things like that. And he'll say these things, or these broad, silly concepts. But he was pitching the idea of a scary house that was a monster house that would eat people. And I think he was fucking with Dan, and then they wound up doing that pitch for real. And then it got a green light and they had to write it. So then they started writing Monster House, the movie. However, they never finished it. They got most of the way through it and then it got handed off to somebody else, which would be why there's the somewhat famous like Dan Harmon letter to a 7-year-old that like the 7-year-old didn't like the movie, or it was specifically the kid's mom was writing Dan Harmon about it because it was scary. And Dan Harmon just went down the rabbit hole of explaining like the problems with malfeasance of producers and all the stuff that a child would never understand or care about. But he was basically saying that like the story he wanted to deliver was one where they would have understood the house and come to a more peaceful resolution as opposed to let's blow the sucker up. And some other things like the fact that the house
smile, you
hurt.
son of a...
Yeah, it's like the house kept wanting to hurt like people after they didn't want to hurt it anymore. So there are all these things where Dan sort of went into it about how smart people can recognize fear, but that's also the thing that allows you to overcome it because you're smart enough to do that. He says that to this child, but he also says that Gil Keenan's a hack and that Steven Spielberg's a moron at the tail end. And he also throws a heck of a lot of shade on this portion of the movie where they go into the house. Because the thing is that they find out that the house is the wife's spirit, like it's haunted by that. But they don't get a magic key. There's nothing to like unlock there. They just suddenly come out and then there's the old man and he's like, oh yeah, my wife's in the house. Hey, I'll help you guys blow up my wife house. Or my housewife. Which he comes to pretty quick. It seems odd. Like, he was like waiting around on it that long, and he had all the munitions that long, and it was just until these children showed up, and he got like injured and had to leave that he's suddenly like, well, maybe we'll blow it up. Seems weird.
Maybe there was an off-screen moment of him in the hospital after facing getting ready to face his own mortality that realized that maybe I've got to right the wrongs of my ghost housewife or whatever. I'm grasping at straws here because it's not in the movie. But I also do you wonder how much of the movie, once they got the pitch, Amblin, Zemeckis and Spielberg, that they already just kind of started going to work on it, and like doing what they were going to do anyway, regardless of what the script came out with, because it's a computer animated movie, so this shit's done months and months and months and months. So I mean, like, I wonder how much of that, in their own mind, Spielberg and Zemeckis, they wanted to do. I mean, like, the concept itself is ridiculous, but if done right, and I'm glad they did make it animated. I think if you try to do this as a real thing, it would just be like a Roger Corman movie. And So, and that's what they're more or less trying to do, but they do Zemeckis and Spielberg it up for two reasons. One, the leaf falling, right from the beginning, you catch the Forrest Gump reference, and then, again, the blowing up of the house is very much like Jaws. That's how you get rid of the bad guy. You eliminate the bad guy.
Blow it up.
Which is also kind of a throwback to Stephen King, too. I mean, it's not like Stephen King wants to be friends with it at the end of it. Like, you're not saying, we need to understand him, where he comes from.
The explanation for these things are different. Like, ultimately, think about Tremors or Jaws. Is there an animal, like they're a creature that is mindless and kills? And the thing about it is it's like just an evil entity. Like, it's not like it has positive traits or it's not like it is eating children because it has trauma from being a sideshow freak. It is eating children because it thinks they're delicious and it believes itself above humanity and that human life and death is inconsequential, and it represents racism and sexism and trauma. Like, it is all the things that happened to you as a child and last into your adulthood. Like, that's what it fundamentally is. It's not a person who had a shitty life, a shitty, sad life.
I mean, it's one of those things, like with this movie, it sets you up with the problem I have with how Monster House is put together is that they do humanize the wife, and even the husband, and it seems like there's a way more interesting movie, and I've seen this done before, and it's been more interesting, like Little Shop of Horrors. The thing I noticed, the musical, yeah, like the main character sort of starts taking care of the plant, and he starts projecting onto the plant, and then the plant starts eating people. It's Greedy Guts is another example. That's an old like fable about a family that takes home a little log, and then the log gets nursed and turns into like a man-eating monster. But it's basically this thing that would have been more interesting if the husband had been sort of aware his wife house needed to eat and was trying to feed the house. Then that would have set up a clear like villain. In this, it's just like the house is just sort of angry all the time.
But also,
and they don't actually take care of the house. They just kill the house, which is sort of like saying you can't work anyone through their trauma.
I don't even know if those metaphors work, because even in Little Shop, the thing is, Seymour does take care of Audrey 2, which is the name of the plant. But Audrey 2 is not like a morose soul with a history of tragedy. Audrey 2 is a monster. Audrey 2 wants to eat everybody on the fucking planet Earth and was born 3 days ago. Like, Audrey 2 is back to front a genocidal villain. And this character is indeed somebody who has like this very sad, horrible backstory. And like, it's okay. Like, this is not Audrey 2. This is Frankenstein's monster specifically. Like, Frankenstein's monster in the book and in the movie, often in the best versions, is a tragic character who doesn't doesn't have quite control of itself. It doesn't understand the situations that it's in. It didn't ask for it. And like, wants certain things, wants connections from certain people and support. Audrey 2 is manipulating Seymour from the get-go. Like, Audrey 2 doesn't give a fuck about Seymour. In the original version of the ending of that movie, she kills him. She
eats him.
And the entire world. Yeah.
Other than the fact that the house was bad, the guy, specifically the husband's motivations, appeared to not really be there. They seemed to mostly service when a plot point had to happen. So he'd like come to terms with the fact that, we need to kill the house now. I'm just saying it would have been more interesting to have more of like a toxic relationship type thing where he's feeding the house or something like that to at least give it a little more teeth. But that wouldn't be good for a children's show.
And you'd have to make the house Constance. You have to make Constance more villainous.
Or like, if you could Disneyfy it if you want and have like some evil witch curse Constance or whatever, like some gypsy, like, palm reader at the circus that she was at or whatever. If you wanted to Disneyfy it, which, Spielberg was in no mood to do at the time and probably still today. But I'm going to give you both points, actually, because I think you both bring up something very interesting. I think, Zach, you're going to give a point for the Frankenstein reference, because I think that's pretty accurate. Because it's almost like Never cut, Never cut, I can't remember.
Never Cracker.
Character.
His last name is Cracker because he's a cracker.
Right. Got it. Sure. And she's never there. I think that if you look at Nutcracker as like Dr. Frankenstein and the house as Frankenstein's monster, there's a kind of interesting kind of connection there that I kind of think that you get. So where there is some level of sympathy for the beast that's trying to kill you, I think that I'm also going to give Borf a point, because I think had they had some sort of plot device or some mechanism for the reason why this house has to devour children and devour things all the time, rather than just a convenient way to either do two things. One, convince whoever's talking to DJ that the house is eating people, or get the people who are trying to stop the house out of their way for the house to eat them, which is pretty much what happens. There's no real motivation other than just it doesn't like children. And I think that's a pretty big...
It also just dawned on me that it is pretty troubling that they show that the house was originally a larger lady, and that it's now driven to eat constantly. A little... that's probably a note. They did that intentionally, but that's a little weird. Everything that happened inside the house was very strange to me. Like, it was kind of fun. The 3D visuals were exciting, I guess, because it was interesting to see how they did it, and some of the stuff was fun.
I would have dated this later than 2006, I think.
Yeah.
I
think some of just like understanding like what the function of the house was a little strange. Like the geography of things, like they were explaining like this is going to be, the head of the house, the uvula, the intestines, all that stuff. But then like, I don't get what the woman in cement was doing in the basement. I didn't.
Well, that's the wife fell into the cement.
Yeah.
Yeah. When she died, she fell into the not dry cement, and
I don't understand what you're
and apparently just got left in the house for the whole time.
They did just leave her in there.
You wouldn't call the cops. You wouldn't potentially go bury your wife properly. You just keep building a house.
I think Never Cracker is Norman Bates. You see, that's she just keeps it there and builds the shrine. It's that kind of thing. Never Cracker's the bad guy here, is what I'm saying. Because or even show that like he did some sort of like summoning ritual to try to bring her back to life, and it went horribly awry.
That would be interesting.
The house instead. That's what. So just having the house just be a monstrous house, and what I was appreciative of the movie and jump with the design and stuff was when the monster actually becomes unmoored from the from ground or whatever starts. I thought that was a fun visual because it actually looked like a monster house. And when the monster, I thought
when the legs pop on and it starts running around like Baba Yaga.
It's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That I love it. That's awesome. So yeah, just a little bit more plotting, and I guess you're right. I guess they just figured, kids are stupid. They'll be fine. They'll just, swallow whatever. They don't care.
I mean, it almost feels to be like they shouldn't have had anyone get eaten by the house. Like, it seems like for things like this, that tone of what is too scary for children and what's fun for children. Like a example of what's fun would be like Monster Squad, where there's occasionally people getting killed, but it's usually not the kids themselves.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know if I agree. I think that one, Monster Squad there's some the violence in that is occasionally quite, they blow that fucking werewolf apart. People do get murdered. No one in this movie dies. No one, no character dies. Everybody crawls out at the end. Or we were talking previously before the show about the original Hocus Pocus. One interesting thing about that is not repeated in the sequel is a literal girl is killed in the opening. Like, they fully murder a young child in that movie. And kids movies, I don't think do that anymore. ever, really. Like,
Mm-hmm.
No,
and
I guess it's a sad thing, like a bridge to Terabithia. They're not gonna.
I mean,
like,
it's sad in that movie, but it's also like an instigating thing. But I just think that, like, I don't know, like there's this some on Twitter. There's been this like puritanical thing about like, do we really need sex scenes in movies? Like you see this coming up from like a weird number of people being like, and I think it's because like Marvel movies are so sterile, but in terms of sex and sexual chemistry, but and that's like all half of the population watches. But like, I don't know, I kids are able to experience like things like that. Like I think that there's too much like, oh, caution, think of the children around this kind of shit, when like some of my favorite shit when I was a kid was like stuff that was not afraid to get a little darker on some things. And I feel like that option is eternally cut back and back and back these days.
And I feel like
this movie it should have just gone more to one way or the other.
Thank you.
That was kind of the thing.
Yeah,
like, it didn't.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it felt like it was halfway in the middle. Like
Yep.
I dislike fake outs like that where you're like, okay, you guys are gonna be telling me a scary movie where people are being killed, but then it's like, oh, but everyone's fine at the end.
Yeah,
because it's sort of like
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, it's like everyone gets what they want, and it's like, well, then there are no stakes if everyone gets what they want.
What is with me? This is the second movie in a fucking row where I fucking did that to us. I mean, like where everything just works out and everything's fine. You know, everybody's happy. Happy Halloween.
I mean, the house is dead. The house is dead at the end.
Yeah, but that was
sad.
like they made no effort to make that. Well, and that's they lean into the house being sympathetic. There's that moment where Nevercracker is talking to the house, and there's this very good moment that kids' movies are great at, where it's like sweet and menacing at the same time. And then it's just like, all right, we'll just go blow this fucker up, you know. I mean, when if it was like, you know, like Monsters Inc. or whatever, I felt like did a better job of like trying to tie that circle in. And by the way, like this is still right at the time when Pixar's on the rise. Like Pixar's about to really take over, and probably is even at this point.
I mean, Monsters Inc. might have came out the same year, for all I know.
Yeah. Well, no, I think The Incredibles came out a little bit before this, and I think Monsters Inc. was before The Incredibles.
Monsters Inc. was 5 years before this. Also a Steve Buscemi project.
Yeah, but I'll be damned. Right. Hey, Incredibles had Jason Lee, who played Bones. What did you guys think of the character design in general? Like, I know that it was, like, motion captured, and there was, like, rotoscoping, but it's not like they're still meant to look like cartoons, right? Like, they're still, like, not human. Like, it was pretty disarming to hear Catherine O'Hara's voice and kind of see her sort of mannerisms or whatever, but it's in this kind of weird, almost like you said, almost claymation sort of aesthetic.
Or Fred Willard, R.I.P.
Yeah, rest in peace. Power Man.
I actually didn't know that this was mocap like that. I assumed that everything was just hand animated, but I guess it didn't really...
was big at this point. I mean,
I remember that. I just, for some reason, I thought because the bodies and the structures were smaller
they were
that they wouldn't have done that. But
and it's not like the Polar Express where he's trying to make them like human. Like these characters look like they're exaggerated.
Yeah,
they don't look like normal real people. They have like longer heads, or you know, Nevercracker looks like a caricature of an old man. Like it's not like they're trying to do a 1-to-1 of real life with 2006 CGI technology.
Right? Yeah. Right. It's just maybe they are handcuffed with the technology at the time, because I think there is a weird disproportion between the head and the body. You know, where the heads are slightly larger and fill up a lot more space, so it's a little bit weird to see such more or less anatomically correct torsos and legs and arms and extremities and stuff.
Yeah, and we know they're anatomically correct because of that shower scene.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the heads might have been bigger so that they could telegraph the emotions easier. Because
fair enough. That's
at the time they probably were pretty limited on how close they could get with actually getting subtlety in the faces. So just making sure it would play to the back probably helped them out for the most part. To be honest, most of the character designs were pretty bland. The house was an interesting design. Nevercracker was, I guess, an okay design. He just sort of looked like an old man. Chowder, I think.
Chowder.
Chowder, like his little his cape was probably the most interesting choice about him. So I don't really know if I remember anything about the other characters other than one was a girl, one was a boy, and I think one of the boy had brown hair.
I think the DJ is basically supposed to be Will Wheaton from Stand By Me. Yeah,
he's very smart and logical, Hermione, and she's Hermione. Yeah. Some people I was reading like review things. People were like, "Oh, they just ripped off the basic chemistry of like the Harry Potter, Ron, Harry, Hermione trio."
That's funny. I guess that makes sense. I was kind of blind to some of that stuff when this came out. I was 26 when this came out, so I think I was midway through college at the time. I was not going to see animated movies.
We were too busy singing detectives, sir. The relationship of prepubescent kids vis-a-vis supernatural, what have you, this is much more in common with King and Stephen King than anything Harry Potter ever did. Harry Potter is much more like whimsical and whatever. This is much more like, I don't know, menacing, I guess, is the way I would. Well, it is menacing. That's what I get why you're kind of bristling at this film for, because like you get the sense that this is menacing and there's gonna be like some, but then like everybody just crawls out of the pit and roll credits. Happy Halloween.
I mean, it's very safe.
You feel kind of cheated.
It's very safe.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching it as like dudes. I'm assuming if we all had kids and we were trying to check a box and we were trying to make sure they wouldn't watch something too scary that makes them stay up at night, we might pick this one.
But I mean, what do you think the goal of this movie was? Was it to like scare children, or was it to just send it more like on a more like Hocus Pocus, where it's more or less like a magical fantasy sort of thing? Because I got the sense it was trying to scare you a little bit.
Yeah, I think that this is the dichotomy. Maybe that letter that Dan Harmon sent and them writing that letter is that, like, I don't know. I don't think the focus was unified in this movie necessarily. Ultimately, this is the movie of maybe the producers, more so than any of the individual creators. And the producer's goal is always the same. And that is to make some fucking money. I think that this is a mishmash of goals. I don't think this is a single unified artistic vision of a single person.
I looked up Gil Kenan real quick. To see what else he'd done. He did City of Ember after this, which was a straight to theaters, like children's
straight to
film.
Theaters.
Yeah, straight to theaters back when that was a thing.
It was so bad they didn't even want a home release. Don't you dare put this in my house.
But he also directed the remake of the 2015 Poltergeist. And it looks like
they remade Poltergeist?
They did in 2015, and it was bad. And he also co-wrote the Ghostbusters Afterlife movie from 2021 with Jason Reitman. So I have a feeling this guy probably is working very hard to be in the mold of Spielberg or Zemeckis, which is probably aiming at sort of the larger, safer choices, not going to go a lot of edgy stuff. I'm not going to call him a hack. That was kind of mean of Dan, but I don't know if this guy has like a deeper story he can tell, or if it's basically just sort of broad entertainment.
Well, I mean, could you even be Spielberg or Zemeckis anymore? I mean, is it even? I mean, what's the Miller and Lord are probably the closest to I could think of to probably do stuff that's kind of garnered towards a younger audience while still being.
I think you can, but it has to be. You can't expect the same kind of widespread success. Like, for instance, I don't know if you saw Nope. But Nope reminded me heavily of like things like Tremors and Jaws when I actually saw it. It was much more, I felt like that kind of action thing at the end of the day than a lot of what I'd seen before. And Jordan Peele like has made a name for himself in that regard. But ultimately, it is not possible now to be Jordan Peele is like the closest thing to it, but like ultimately IPs run the town. Like it's Jordan Peele is making a pretty good run at like trying to make like a director, like a directed by credit mean something. But at the end of the day, the real thing that's going to sell is there an IP attached?
Yeah. Steven Spielberg absolutely got a big chunk of the boost in his career from the auteur theory and the fact that it got so popularized at that period of time. Mostly when they first started arguing the theory, I think it was a legitimate argument about writers or directors, but I think later on it's just been a marketing thing. And there are clear examples of people who are great, who did it well, like Alfred Hitchcock. But people are still doing it. I think they're still going to be doing that for a while, but
Wes Anderson or Tarantino, like they're still making movies. They're just not. They're not. Spielberg's still fucking making movies.
Well, I mean, I think it's a dissolution of the attention. Like, it used to be if a Spielberg movie came out, that was a huge event. It was a tentpole movie. It would keep that industry and that, it would keep that whole production company running. But now, like, these movies come out like once a week. I don't even know. But
that's not necessarily true, I think, because like you still get movies that are like breaking box office records once or twice a year. It's just they're like a Spider-Man movie. Like
it's especially I think common with animated movies, like more times than not, if it's animated these days, it's from another license, and not even just Marvel and stuff. There's the Lego movie, Spider-Man, and very rarely nowadays, like the Miller's versus the Machines or whatever is the closest.
Which I thought was a very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent film. And Pixar, to its credit, still does original stuff. But they also are no problem, hammering out an Incredibles 5 or whatever. They'll, to their credit, they'll still do original animated stuff. That's why it was kind of nice. It's kind of, you forget that back in the day in 2006, you could get away with just doing an animated film and make it, financially viable to release in theaters and it not have attached to it some sort of already built-in audience, back then. In nowadays, I don't think you could. It would have to go to Netflix, like, Miller's versus the Machines, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, there was such a glut of this stuff for a while. For sure. Like, there was, like, Romeo and Juliet. There was, like...
Chicken Run. There's a bunch.
Guardians of the something.
Oh, yeah.
That, it's all these...
Guardians of Ga'Hoole, Zack Snyder's opus, Guardians of Ga'Hoole.
The Ghouls. Yeah, Yeah.
Though there was also that one that was Guardians of something else, the one with like the Jack Frost character and like they were all like seasonal characters. I can't remember what that was called.
Bunny.
Yeah, it was Guillermo del Toro was somehow involved in that.
That was big on Tumblr for shipping the Jack Frost character with Elsa from Frozen.
Oh. Is Elsa from Frozen like a character that existed before Frozen?
It's like an old, like,
no, I mean, but I don't think
Ice Queen.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
It's the Ice Queen?
Telling that story forever. Yeah, that's the, yeah.
Okay, because I didn't know it was the Ice Queen.
Disney
like, I didn't really...
Most of their shit has just been fairy tales.
And also...
The Elsa thing I'm not very aware of. It's like, I'm aware that there's a song. I'm aware there's a
So
character.
that Guardians of the whatever it is...
Rise
and
of the
Frozen
Guardians?
came out the year after. Rise of the Guardians came out in 2012 and Frozen came out in 2013. So it's not like they're dramatically distanced characters.
Gotcha.
So it would be inappropriate for them to date. They're only a year apart.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of funny that even back then, like all these major studios were trying to vie to dethrone Pixar, because Pixar, as far as still, even in 2000, way back then, Pixar was still king, as far as I can tell, as far as like computer animated stuff. And Pixar only got better. Like they've only got better in the years went on. Where this is before WALL-E and Up. And
I mean, now they're relegated to streaming releases too.
That's true. So like it's kind of funny that these things were all in contention with each other, and it seems like outside of the Minions movies. And the odd, like, I don't know, Peanuts movie or
Moji's movie
or whatever. Yeah, right. Yeah, or Trolls World Tour or whatever. Everything is usually associated with something that's previously come out outside of the Mitchells and the Machines. But Pixar, for what it's worth, has still done things that are different and out there. And when like their movie Soul, I thought was very, very good considering how long this studio's been doing keeping that shtick going. I thought Soul surprised me for how sweet and tender that movie really was. And I think Monster House,
or more recently Turning Red, which I think I preferred to Soul personally.
That. I haven't seen that. Lightyear sucked. I didn't care for Lightyear.
Well, I didn't watch that. I haven't seen that, but
that was just basically Star Wars. It's pretty dumb. But that's what this was, wasn't it? Monster House is pretty much an action movie. Like with the
it's a bit of like just a It is very much like a Spielberg, like which we've been circling around a lot with the smile, you son of a bitch, and blah blah blah. But also like the ET element, or like the kids, it's the girl they have a crush on. It's growing up. It takes place in 1983. All that shit.
I always kind of felt like Spielberg's movies are trying to be like amusement park rides. There's always ups and downs and exciting moments that are similar. This one, they go into the house, they're being whipped around. There's all these actions.
Especially
happening.
Schindler's List, which was
okay,
had a lot of highs, a lot of
good point, Zach. But no, like this one was in 3D. Yeah. Oh man, this movie's black and white. It's really slow. Yeah, no, this one was in 3D, which I know is a big shtick at the time, but it's one of those things where I kind of got a feeling that a lot of the whipping
this
around
came out in 3D.
Yeah.
So this is before Avatar, though, right? So like,
yes, I guess it was 2006. Yeah. Avatar came out so long ago. I have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, all the 3Ds were ugly to me, so I don't know. This is just another version of it being less than great. I guess the new Avatar movies are also supposed to be in 3D, so have fun with that.
Hey,
we'll see. This is an interesting question. Can James Cameron beat, like, I guess Avatar is kind of an IP, but also he's competing against the IP box office. Will Avatar 2 pull it off?
I don't know. He's got the Disney bank behind him. I think he'll be fine.
Every time he comes out with a movie that's this size, people are expecting it to be a bomb. Titanic was the same thing. Like, I remember before Titanic came out, everybody thought it was going to be a bomb. And then it came out, and, all the Celine Dion crap. And then Avatar started getting worked on, and everyone was like, oh, this is amazing. He's done years and years of research. Yada. And then it comes out, and I was kind of like, this is going to probably bomb, and then it did billions of dollars.
And everyone said it was a bombing success, is what I meant.
Yeah,
a bombing success.
So I'm not a good gauge of this guy's success or failure rate at this point, but
I also think that the market, the world of cinema has changed so much since Avatar.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that came out did that come out before the MCU even started? Maybe 1 year after Iron Man.
It was not long. It was not long at all.
I think I was in college when Avatar came out. So
yeah.
Avatar exists in the ecology of where this movie, Monster House, came out. It's the same sort of financial metrics still at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it is butts into seats at theaters, and then we'll rake in the DVDs for the babysitters and whatnot. So like that's what's kind of, to me, interesting about this movie. I mean, like I said, I sort of think that had this movie made a decision to go one way or another, rather than just trying to play it as safe as possible and just make everything work out, and because there's a lot of meat on the bone. It's a solid concept. I mean, it's goofy as hell, but you can make that menacing and fun.
Sure, you can
and even
do
make it fun for kids. I just think that
lean in a little more one way or the other.
Right? Yeah, I just think they tried to have it both ways.
It's interesting that so much of our conversation on this episode has been dominated not by the movie itself, but by like the landscape of cinema as a business.
Yeah.
And how this movie reflects maybe a point in time in that, a changing point in time or an indecision in the creative process.
And I think in modern times, like this whole movie would be on streaming, and it would either be like more extreme or less extreme or be funnier or something else would happen. I have a feeling that this would have probably like a mid-tier level computer generated animated thing only exists in streaming now. Like I don't think you could put these out in theaters anymore in this context.
Yeah.
It would have to be a massive IP that would like bring people back. Like it would be crazy. But even that, there's no guarantee. I mean, like, look, Jeff Bezos is spending $1 billion on that Lord of the Rings show for 8 episodes. So it clearly doesn't matter how much money you pump into it. It just depends on if people show up.
Well, I'll say this, not related to the business side of things. As usual, I think Steve Buscemi did a good job. I think he is a strong performer.
We're 4 for 4 on this dude, right? Yeah, this is our 4th movie with Steve Buscemi, and he knocks it out of the park. Wouldn't you know it?
Yeah. Steve Buscemi doesn't.
It does seem like he's one of the few characters that are awake when the movie's happening. Yeah.
The rest are children. I mean,
Steve Buscemi has to carry like the most emotional weight of the film, and I think he does it with aplomb.
You know what? You know what? The guy knows how to roll up his sleeves and put forth the effort, and he nails it every time. So, good man on Steve Buscemi. And this is also like this is a kids movie. So like I kind of have to, again, like we've done this before with other kids movies on this podcast, where I kind of have to put my brain in a certain mindset to really enjoy it. And for what it's worth, it was fine. Like you said, it's a Spielberg roller coaster ride. You're gonna go through and then by the end, everything's gonna be fine, and I'll go, have my peanut butter sandwich or whatever, and wait for the next scary movie that they're gonna show me. That they're gonna tell me is scary and isn't really scary at all. Yeah. So I mean, like kids movies that scare me. I mean, Hocus Pocus that really scared me, but Ghostbusters did kind of freak me out. Gremlins freaked me out. You could make kids movies scary.
Right, but this is also that thing we've been talking about where the sanitization of kids movies, like Gremlins. I know a lot of people who were like, I saw Gremlins when I was a kid and it scared the shit out of me. And maybe a little bit Hocus Pocus, like the little girl dies. They burn the witches alive. Like I think that's more intense than they would have gone in the sequels.
They throw them in an oven too, by the way, which I thought like that's a little clever. Yeah, right.
I mean, children's movies used to be a lot darker.
Like I don't know. Maybe this is a blindness of mine. Maybe it's like just because I grew up in an area where there was a little more darkness in children's media, and even then, like I watched like the TBS Child's Plays when I was like less than 10, and I started reading It and watching the Friday the 13th movies, or I first saw the uncut version of Scream when I was like 11 or 12 or something like that. You can let kids explore dark shit. Like it depends on the kid, not all kids. Like some kids are more okay with that than others, but for me, I loved it. I super loved it.
My gut tells me that it might be a situation where parents don't want to broach certain topics with kids, hoping that their kid is going to stay a kid and keep their childhood going a little bit longer, which I don't really agree with. But it's also one of those things that changes over time. Like for some reason, it's just a cultural shift. Like when the Brothers Grimm books first came out, those were a lot darker in their first edition than they were when they came out in the 7th edition, and one brother was dead and the other brother had become a conservative Christian and decided that he had to get all the death and murder out of those stories that had made them fun in the original place.
Well, I think there's a balance between, like, obviously I'm, children, like I'm all for protecting children from like real life threats, but like engaging in fiction that is, if they are able to and mature enough to, letting them engage in like a little bit more challenging fiction than fucking, everybody does like the Penguins do a choreographed dance to fucking that downtown song that plays at every wedding. So I don't know what it's called. Like you don't have to just have CGI minions twerking Like, you can make a kids movie where like the fucking Monster Squad shoots werewolf.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I mean, I'm a big fan of the original Willy Wonka, mostly because of the absolute nightmare.
It's insane. It's a fucking nightmare. But it's, you know,
it's great. I remember being like severely traumatized by that turkey head coming off, but you know, it also was just a little harsher for kids at the time. I don't know.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a great example of that too. Like, Christopher Lloyd's character is genuinely pretty terrifying, and he's coming off at you as a cartoon. Not my cartoons. My cartoons like me. Oh no, you know, like that's kids. There's usefulness to that. There's growth that happens behind playing in that fantasy and having. I mean, obviously you're not going to show like, you know, prepubescent, because the age of which the like DJ and Chowda are supposed to be are like prepubescent Stephen King age, right? They're that age where their girls are now becoming a thing. The Stranger Things sort of trope that is that's
adolescence,
where
puberty.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about when you start to really like saying, I'm going to watch me fucking, you know, Hellraiser and all this, you know, like that's the age where I certainly started to discover horror movies. But, you know, when you're in the age of like elementary school, you know, like, you know, maybe like 5th grade or something, you can handle some scare. You're not going to show them like it. First of all, they're not going to sit through it. They're just going to fall asleep.
First of all, kids, if you're listening, don't watch any version of it. Read it.
That's right.
Because
they'll definitely go to sleep.
the both film versions are. The book is better. You could skip that chapter late where they all are trapped in the tunnels. Forget about that part. But otherwise, it is Stephen King. It's his masterpiece in my opinion. The thing Pixar tapped onto that actually didn't exist maybe as much when we were younger, though Pixar is actually, I mean, I was 8 when Toy Story came out, 7 or 8. So for me, I don't know, like they were part of my childhood to a degree, but not in their maybe heyday. Is that and Mitchell's versus the Machines, I think, taps into this, and some of the older Spielberg films like E.T. is that there's emotional depth that you can mine. Like it's okay to have a movie that like has themes about, I don't know, loss, grief, mortality. Like Pixar has done all of those things, even if the kids don't immediately realize it. But we've lost also the idea that a villain can just be a villain and just like be heinous and evil. Like that's kind of gone out the window.
You kind of brought this up with Hocus Pocus, because in the sequel they kind of they lend a moment towards the end where you kind of sympathize with the Sanderson.
And at the beginning, the opening is a flashback to them being
but even that you're just showing what a terrible person Winifred is, which I'm okay with that. And the kids were cast well at least. I just think that when you're doing it's I agree with you, Zach, because we talk often about like how Disney, there's no good Disney bad guys anymore. You know, they're just so rare. And even when they are, when they have an opportunity to make such a cool bad guy, they kind of say, well, he's not a bad guy. He's my uncle. He's okay. You know, like it's And they sometimes do that back in the
Could I say quickly? There have been 4 phases, I think, of Disney bad guys. There was the original phase, which was there's a villain and they are fucking evil. They're fucking. This lasts from like basically the Snow White evil queen to like Scar, maybe beyond that. Yeah, all that shit. Like they're just like, this person's a piece of shit. And then they kind of transitioned to this phase where it was like the villain is evil, but you don't know they're the villain till the last like 10 minutes of the movie. Like they seem like a friend or the ally, and then at the very end they like, ooh, that's the villain. And then they transitioned into the villain is actually sympathetic. You think they're bad, but they're actually very kind and like they're misunderstood. And now it's the era. Well, actually, there's 5 phases, but then there was the era of there is no villain whatsoever. The villain is misunderstanding. And the new era is the villains from the first era, like Cruella de Vil and Maleficent, are actually also nice people.
I agree. I've been very confused by that recent thing with Cruella and the rest of it. It also feels like there's a sense now that people always want a reason for why someone's bad. It used
Sometimes
to be...
people fucking suck, man.
Yeah.
Like, I think kids need to know that, like, there are bad people who are just shitty.
Yeah.
Like, Trump isn't bad because he had a, like he's just a shit.
I mean,
like, his dad sucked, whatever. But, like, that's not why he's bad. Plenty of people had shitty dads who weren't billionaires and are fine.
I think the challenge is mostly the storytelling on how to make that a compelling character. Like for example, Hannibal Lecter. He was just a
Hannibal
bad
Lecter is
guy.
a compelling character. The Joker is a compelling character.
Yeah,
Hans Gruber is a compelling character.
Yeah, the wacky...
But they're all pieces of shit.
Yeah, exactly. I think that one of the problems is people sometimes don't handle them well, and it's at not handling it well gets in the way, like The Hitcher. The Hitcher was just a cold, unpleasant movie with a villain that was basically a serial killer, and they didn't really give him a reason to be that way. It was just his hobby, his habit. They never
But Henry Portrait of the Serial Killer is, a counter argument,
Yeah, I mean, that was like a good movie. Because, they went through the same thing, and he was a cold narcissist, and it almost weaponized what your expectations were by the end of that movie, where you thought a character arc was going to happen, and then you realize, oh, no, this is still a leopard. He still has his stripes. He's still a leopard. Yeah. So I guess I probably have capped my thoughts.
Yeah, let's do final thoughts and get done with this movie. Because once again, Russell dropped the
I think we might have talked about this movie longer than the movie's runtime.
That's what I will say. It was short. You'll get through it. But, back then with animation cost $1 billion. So, okay. I guess, Zach, why don't you go first since you're choosing the next movie?
Okay. This is this is one of those ones, I feel like I've said this a million times. I don't hate this movie. There's things about it that are fine. Like, it's perfectly well crafted in many regards. But it is, I had seen it before this once years ago. I think because I knew Dan Harmon was involved, and like I liked Community or whatever. But it's nothing special. And I think it's a little confused in execution. I don't know. Like, you don't need to see this movie. It's fine. But if you do see it, you won't unduly suffer. It's not the worst movie we've ever watched, but it's hard to formulate like a cohesive theory on this, except it's designed by committee. It's the blind men touching the elephant a little bit.
I'll just dive into it. It was very bland for me. I know Dan and Rob, or at least I've interacted with them. I didn't get a sense of them in this movie particularly. Like, there maybe were a couple things where I was like, oh, maybe that's something that they wrote, but I didn't get a sense
talking
of it. To
the dummy, I felt that felt very Harmon-esque, where he's just like, I've been training you all your life for this dummy. Like, that felt like a Harmon moment.
I mean, yeah, it could be, because Dan also has a thing with dummies. A leg specifically.
Well, it worked with you.
There's that Andrew Kendrick series.
That's true. Yeah. Well, it's literally, he has a thing for legs. This is not a joke. He is into mannequin legs in a sexual way, and he's talked about it openly, so I don't mind spilling that tea, because it led to a lot of awkward mannequin moving. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah, so it's a fine movie. It's not great. I'm gonna forget it. I've seen the poster a lot. I think I've seen the poster all over the place. So I've seen the poster so much that, like, I have a memory of it from that more than the movie. I don't know if kids are gonna remember this when they're older, and I think that there's probably a better level of just creepy you can do with animation. I am looking forward to the Junji Ito movie, based off Uzumaki. That is more my style. I want to be disturbed and horrified by what I'm seeing. I don't want to have a good time the whole time. So, yeah, don't watch this movie if you got eyes, but if you do have eyes and you're too young to know how to look at better things, go ahead and watch this. It's fine.
Okay. I probably didn't hate the movie that much. Like I mean, like it's at least it's a ride, right?
Yeah, it's
fine.
At
least you're going through the roller coaster. You're not gonna go on it again, but it was a ride. The little thing popped out, and you were like, "Oh, look at that! That's interesting. Giant monster running. That's fun." Hey, look, it's barely lunchtime. I made it. So. Yeah, and I think both of you are kind of right where this is like too many smart people got their hands on this movie.
And a few too many people who just wanted to make money.
Right. And that's okay, in the business, when it is a business, those are what we call the smart people. Because that's what you're in business to do. You're there to make money to do it. Wow. That being said, I think part of what makes movies economically longer is making them quality, because then they'll keep returning to the well, you see. This movie did nothing for me to want to say, like, well, I can't wait to watch that again. Even when there were moments of promise. That's what I think I'm kind of with Bora for. I'm more upset about the tee-up than I am the hitting of the ball. Even if it was just, barely a fly ball. I felt like, ooh, it's going to go. And then it just, all right, fine, whatever. So that series of grunts and noises that I just made is about my experience watching this movie. I remember what my little brother recommended this movie. He said it was pretty good when he came out. He was just got out of high school, so he was kind of like, oh, for a kid's movie, not that bad. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Brandon, I don't care. And I never watched it, and so when this theme came up of Halloween, I was so stumped because I had already put myself in a box saying I wouldn't do John Carpenter's Halloween, which I just should have fucking done. So I just went down a list of movies that take place on Halloween, and I saw that movie. I remember that you worked with Harmon, and I know you did a thing with Scrabs. So I'm like, let's see if Borf's got anything. If anything, he'll watch it, and then but it was worth it that you didn't like it. I guess it's worth it for me. So I'll say the fact that Borf says don't watch it if you have eyes. It's worth it for me to have him watch it. So
I mean, if there's anything you want to ask me about it, I can tell you what I know. But yeah,
it's
basically just
it
was a paid for hire job for those guys.
Right. That's what the problem I have with that movie is. I picked this movie expecting to have all sorts of burning questions and shit, but I don't. Nothing. Don't care. I could probably guess. Of what went wrong with this movie. But other than that, it's a compelling enough premise. The premise is fun enough. It's executed, as far as the visual is concerned, relatively well for 2006. Not bad. But due to the lack of, focus on where they wanted the finish line to be, this movie just rushes to the finish line, doesn't care what place it gets into. We made it. It's the end, roll credits, happy Halloween. So, yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on it. So, that is my movie for our theme of movies that take place in or around Halloween for our Spooky Ookie 3rd annual Halloween battle. So before we get to Zach Powers' pick of what's up in the slate, I was kind and broke precedent and gave points. Borf, you have now 11 points because you got a point from me because I agreed with you about the lack of explanation about eating children, and I felt like that was a missed opportunity to give some sort of, even if it's just a shitty plot device, it would have been fun. And then, Zach, you got a point from me about the Frankenstein comparison. I thought that was very apt. So you have 11 points for final voting, and I have 10 points for final voting. So that brings us to round number 2, which is in the hands of Zach Powers. Zach Powers, what evil are you going to invoke for us in this All Hallows Eve?
I considered a few things, and I think there's truly a number of good options for this. Obviously you can move away from horror, but I don't want to move away from horror. I really debated, should I go with the movie that I think is the movie that takes place around Halloween of all time? And I decided, yeah, I think I do. And I want to go with 2007's Trick or Treat. The most Halloween night movie that ever fucking got made. It's truly about Halloween as a holiday. It's a Christmas Carol for Halloween.
It just had. They announced that they're doing a special theatrical screening soon. They're actually.
If you want to see it in the theater, be my guest. I would love to. I think this is the most Halloween-ass movie that is even more so than Halloween, actually by a mile, that has ever been made. So if we're gonna make movies.
Well, that is a valid challenge.
Yeah. This movie is about the holiday of Halloween in the same way A Christmas Carol is about Christmas.
So some rich guy is gonna figure out.
Well, the plot's not the same.
Okay.
But is it where they go back in time and then it's like?
Have either of you seen this? Have either of you seen this?
I've never seen it.
I have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. This is gonna be a fun one.
Okay.
So,
great.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Trick or Treat 2007 specifically got a big round-headed boy on the cover. Don't watch some other like shitty low-budget movie called Trick or Treat or whatever.
This is like just the
R,
right?
80s.
Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat. Michael Dougherty or something like that.
Yeah, Michael Dougherty. It's got Brian Cox in it, for God's sakes. It's worth it for him.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And Dylan Baker also.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. Hey, the original Lizard himself.
Anna Paquin.
Let's
You can give her take.
Alrighty, well, thank you for joining us for Monster House. Join us next time for Trick or Treat, and we will keep going with the spooks. So, with that in mind, I have been Russell Carlson. I have been joined by Chris Borth.
I can't remember any of the lines from the movie. My trike.
Okay, and I've also been joined by Zach Powers.
Smile, you son of a house.
There you go. I will say, I play video games exactly like that, dude. I'm just like, yeah, you like that metal, don't you? That's right. I'm the king of this video game. I play them exactly like that. Ask anybody, they'll tell
With
you.
a lot of sexual tension?
You bet, absolutely. And that's why I'm so bad at them. Alrighty. Thanks for joining us again. Tell your friends, subscribe. We'll see you next time. And as we always say here on the Movie Trap, Diane Ladd is too young to play Chevy Chase's mom.
Movie Trap promise.
Old Man Nutcracker's house is possessed, and I need to know how to destroy it before it comes out and tries to kill
Calm
me.
down. You make me want to throw up in some tinfoil and eat it. Oh, you like the steel on my blade? It's so cold. Ah! Possessed house, you say? In my travels to the video store and comic book conventions, I've seen many strange and wondrous things. And I've heard tell of man-made structures becoming possessed by a human soul so that the spirit becomes merged with wood and brick, creating a rare form of monster known as Domus Mactibilis. Oh. Sorry, children, but I've got some very, very important business to take care of. I won't be seeing you later.
Thou art dead. Ha 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 ha.